Where did this mindset of yours come from to do these wild things to help promote races? Boxing matches, flying buses, Robosaurus, a circus. Was that mindset created when you were promoting races in places like, Robin Hood and others?
It came about when I was a kid. And I'd go to a racetrack. I'm 9, 10 years old. And, before the race, I remember going to the old Charlotte Speedway. And I got there about an hour early. And I'm sitting up in the grandstand. That's back when kids under 12 could get in free if accompanied by an adult. Of course, I'd just go up to some guy and say, can I walk in there with you? Sure. And so I got in. Sitting there in the grandstand, and nothing is happening. It's just, after you see the track and you take everything in, but nothing is going on. The drivers are all in the infield talking to each other and yakety yak, but it's just nothing. And I thought, they should be doing stuff. And that's where the idea came. And I said, if I ever get a track, we're going to do some crazy stuff. And so, people today, their entertainment is usually on TV. They hardly ever get to see live, like stunts. Where do you see stunts anymore?
Yeah.
You gotta, so I said, well, let's do some stunts because people love stunts. And so, one thing led to another and we did some of these crazy stunts. And then we sit there and think about what stunt hadn't been done. That's when we came up with I got this big picture all packaged up from Los Angeles one day, and I opened it up, and it was a school bus sailing through the air, and it was from a guy named Jimmy Kufis, who was a bus driver in L.A. He drove the L.A. to Vegas deal every day. He drove and then came back home. And so he calls me on the phone. You get my picture? Yeah. I want to make a jump in that bus. Well, nobody ever jumped a school bus before, ever, anywhere. And I thought, nah. I started thinking, I said, school bus. Kids hate school buses. Can we crash it at the end? Oh, yeah. And because, this little kid, he's 8 years old, and he lives in this out there in the country, and they only have 6 school buses.
Yeah.
And he didn't think that the world has more than 6 school buses. He goes to the Speedway and sees a school bus crash, and he says, there's only 5 left. Sooner or later, we won't have to go to school. And so I said, well, you ever jumped one? No. Have you ever done any kind of jumping? No, but I know I can because I'm brave. I said, okay, so, and the more I thought about it, the more fascinating I thought it was. But I didn't want to try it at Charlotte first. Let's go to Bristol. Because I knew Lanny Esther was running Bristol at the time. So I called Lanny and I said, hey, Lanny, you always want to do something different. I said, what about a school bus jump down the front straightaway? Well, he kind of got infatuated with that. So he said, yeah, I'll do it. So I called Jimmy and I said, you're going to Bristol on a certain date. And it was the summer race, one at night. So he brings school bus to Bristol. I'm up there helping him out. And, of course, Bill Gasaway's running the NASCAR deal now in the pits, and he is not enthralled at all by anything I do. And so he said, he knew I was behind this deal. And so here we come. First school bus jump in history. And the Kufis is coming down that front stretch. And he's got to make about 3 passes so everybody can gasp. And then on the 4th pass, he comes down there and he hits that ramp. He was going too fast. Went up in the air, he kept going, and I said, oh my gosh, he's going to hit the first turn. Well, you know, the first turn's banked like this, and he's going to run into it. He did. It knocked a chunk out of it. I decided at that point I needed desperately to go back to Charlotte. This Gazaway's looking for me. What was I going to do at the time? I can't fill the hole up. I don't have any cement. So they finally did it, but they had to extend the race out. So when that bus showed up at Charlotte, he went berserk. Calm down, took a Valium, do something. I said, we got all the room here in the world. All we're going to do is hit that ramp. We're going to jump the width of a football field, and he's going to land in a bed of cars. Better not be close to any race cars. It won't be close to any race cars unless you want to park them down there. That really would be something, Bill. Could jump on top of the field. So Kufus comes in. And meanwhile, I had to get more power in that bus. So we borrowed a Bud Moore racing engine and stuck it in there, and that did it. Now, he could get up and go then. He wanted to put J-tow rockets in the bus, but I didn't like it because if you hit the button and both those J-tows don't go off at the same time, you're going to veer. Good Lord knows what you're going to hit then. You could have hit the field, you know, no race that day, folks. So here he comes, and people are just going crazy because they'd never seen anything like it. We painted a shark's deal on the front, you know, teeth and all that kind of stuff. He went down and hit that ramp. I went up in the air. And I told him, I said, now when you crash, make sure you kind of stagger out of the car. It's an old stunt trick, you know. And then people really cheer you because you've survived. And so he hits the ramp, he goes up in the air, and he hits the bed of cars like that, and it kind of teeters, and then it did the great thing in the world. It went over on its top. And perfect. People going crazy in the grandstand. Well, he doesn't get out, and I'm down there. He doesn't get out, he doesn't get out, he doesn't get out. And finally, here he comes, and he's perfect. Oh, his back is hurt, and he's doing one of these, and he looks like a 90-year-old man. And so I go over to him, I said, that was great. I said, you really did a good job. Afterwards, I did. What did I do? Well, you look like you were hurt. I am. So people love that, and then we brought it back and a few times. You can't do stuff like that all the time, but it was fun. People liked it, and it was one of those things Johnny Carson played about 20 times when they would have it. I said, "You want to see something crazy? Look at what happened down in Charlotte. Here comes Jimmy Kufus." And I told Jimmy Kufus, I said, Jimmy Kufus, I said, that ain't going to do it. We need to call you something else. What? The Flying Greek. I don't know whether my mother would like that or not. And I said, oh, don't worry about your mother. I'll talk to her. So we started calling him the Flying Greek. And his mother did not like it.
You were always conscious and partial to the drivers, especially independent drivers. But I recall in 1978, there was some kind of disagreement among the drivers and yourself over speed or Bruton. I mean, how did that come about? Which side did you take? This is a better question. When the James Hilton and the other independents, you remember this, decided that if NASCAR didn't change the plans of it led to the plan money. Now, I always thought you were...
Well, this was back in the days when you had to deal with the drivers individually to come to the race. One driver called and he wanted $10,000. Another driver would call and you want 500. And so you had to deal with it, and that was a real pain because it was they didn't have agents; they just called you themselves, you know. And so you'd work out something with them and do it. Well, the independent, non-factory guys never got much money. I mean, you know, if you paid some driver $10,000 or a car owner, then the independent you might pay 500, and he's got significant bills too. So the guys didn't like that. They didn't like the way all the tracks were doing. The independents didn't, and so they started raising Cain and wanted something done about it. And I could see understand their plight because, you know, the independents are called independents because they're not getting money from anywhere. And this is back before we had sponsors of note, you know. And those guys, you know, they'd have Fayetteville Ford on the quarter panel or Joe's Pizza from Norfolk. Just something that, you know, pay them a couple $1,000 versus the huge amounts that they're getting today. So I understood their plight, and Bill France Jr., and I talked all the time, and I said, we got to do something for these guys. We need to come up with something, and he agreed, and so that's when the plan was born, where you didn't have to deal with the guys anymore. Certain guys would get a certain amount of money for showing up. Certain guys would get a certain amount of money. And that pretty well solved the problem. And it was a good give and take on NASCAR's part, on the Speedway's part, and the drivers and car owners.
You also gained a reputation for being the go-to guy for people trying to break into the sport. I couldn't tell you how many people that we've talked to that said when they first got to Charlotte, they went and saw Humpy.
Yeah.
How did you become that person that people came to break into the sport?
I looked at the sport in maybe a way like the movie moguls of the 50s in Hollywood who started the star system. I realized that we were not going to be any better than the guys that we had racing for us. And so if I spotted a young guy that I thought had potential, like Dale Earnhardt Sr., then I would help him as much as possible. And I kept doing that for guys and helping them out. And Alan Kowicki, Ricky Craven, most of Bill Elliott, a lot of those guys, because they're coming along in the early days. They got to build their confidence up, and they got enough people and things were tearing them down like hitting the wall. They're tearing their car in half. They got to figure a way to come back and do it. So I was always interested in the athlete involved in the sport. And I just enjoyed doing it, and I enjoyed helping guys get along and move up. There were certain guys I wouldn't help because I didn't think they would be good for racing. And that became controversial, but that's just the way it was. You have to find guys. I mean, Earnhardt, for gosh sakes, when, you know, I have, of course, his father was a good friend of mine, Ralph. And I'd go over to the shop, and Ralph's shop, and little Earnhardt, totally dirty, greasy, was running around the shop like a chicken with his head cut off. And so I knew him since he was, you know, 8 or 9 years old. And he kept wanting to be able to tell me about being a race driver. He kept telling me about being a race driver. And I knew he had that interest and desire. And so I decided to help him. And so he turned out good. But I look back on him. If he'd come along today, he wouldn't have gotten a ride.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that.
He didn't look right. He didn't talk right. His teeth were crooked. He didn't know how to dress. He was totally the opposite of the drivers we got today. Funny thing about him was, I said, look, you got to get off dirt. You got to get on asphalt because you want to be a cup driver, that's where it is. So he fixed his he took a dirt car and made an asphalt car out of it. 2 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, I get a phone call at the house. Somebody's died. You know, it was him. And I never heard a more depressing person in my life than him on the phone. He says, I done tore my car up at Asheville, the old Asheville Speedway, Motor Speedway. What? I hit the wall so hard it cut the car in half. The motor's cracked. There's nothing left of it. I got to do something. I've never been more discouraged in my life. Well, I could tell that on the phone. So I said, all right, come over to my office Monday morning. We'll figure something out. So he comes over there. And his former father-in-law, Robert G., one of the great body men in racing anywhere, had a shop by the side of the speedway. And I knew he had this old dirt car over there. So I told Dale, I said, well, you know, sometimes you can go backwards and make progress in racing. So maybe you do need to go back on dirt. And because I always thought the really good dirt drivers always made the best super speedway driver because they knew how to run a loose race car. When the track gets this hot, it gets greasy and the car's sliding around. And so he goes to work for Robert at just a minimum wage. Because actually, people don't realize this about Dale Sr., he was a very good body man. Very good with Bondo, you know, that clay that smooths everything over. So he's over there working for Robert. And every Friday I would go over there and have lunch with Robert. It was quite a lunch. It was always bologna, cheese, something else basic, and white bread. Worst thing you can eat, you know. And we'd go over there, and well, Earnhardt was over there now, so he finally talked Robert into uncovering that old dirt car. And so Earnhardt's starting to work on it. So I decided to go there, and they were painting a tractor for me. And I went over, and I noticed everything had turned orange on the inside. Now, if OSHA had even driven by the place, they would have condemned it without even going inside because there was nothing fancy or occupationally healthy about it. So I'm knocking on the door because it's locked, and Robert G comes out and he opens it, and all this orange stuff pours out. And I look in there, and everything and everybody in there is orange. You didn't paint that tractor orange. That's Clemson colors. I went to South Carolina. Anyway, we go over and we have our very healthy lunch of bologna and cheese and white bread. And so Earnhardt, we started talking about work on his car. And he said, well, I about got it finished, but I don't have a motor. I said, well, go see Rick Hendrick, see what he'll do for you. So I did call Rick before we went over there. Well, Rick loaned him a motor. And really, Earnhardt the rest is kind of history because he just kept winning and winning and winning on dirt. And finally, Rod Osterlin, I ran into Rod Osterlin down in Darlington, and I said, "You going?" He said, "I'm going back tonight. I got to get back. This is Friday." And I said, "Well, let me drive you to Charlotte, and if your flight is late, like it was, then we'll go by the Metrolina Speedway and go to the races." "Yeah, I'll do that." So Rod and I went to the race that night. Earnhardt, for some reason or another, because we were a little late getting there, was starting off at the rear of a 100-lap feature. And I'm telling you, it was unbelievable. He kept passing cars. 1 lap to go, he's in second. And he comes around the corner, and Billy Scott's leading the race. And he punches Billy, of course, in the left rear quarter panel. And Billy's up there, and the Toolies and Earnhardt wins the race. Well, Osterlin was mesmerized by Earnhardt. One thing led to another, and he ran in the sportsman race, which is now Infinity at Charlotte, in Osterlin's car, and ended up third. Did a great job. Osterlin put him in another car at Atlanta because he and Dave Marcus were having problems. That was his lead driver. And Earnhardt did a great job down in Atlanta, and he fired Marcus and hired Earnhardt as his chief desk driver, and the rest is history.
Of the many promotions and events you put on at Charlotte, I think there was something that Waylon Jennings was a part of called the Can-Am Gym. What happened there?
Well, that was a case of me learning a lesson about putting two incompatible groups together. The good old boys of the South that came to races and outlaw motorcycle guys, they do not get along. I should have known that. I didn't. And so we made a deal with Waylon, and I knew his manager well, and we agreed that we'd have them as a combination of Wednesday qualifying and then Waylon Jennings concert after that, and we would split the profits. Waylon would get half and we'd get half. Well, Waylon comes in, the first thing he does is he sends this goon down to see me and want his money. I said, well, wait a minute, no, don't we get your money till afterwards? We've already made a deal with your agent. You want me to get him on the phone? No, we're not playing until we get the money. Not getting the money. We'll just cancel it. Well, Waylon's out there in his bus, and he ain't about to cancel anything when there's a possibility of getting some money. So at any rate, we go down and he parks his bus. We had the stage set up on the start-finish line, and Waylon's bus is back there on pit road behind it. And Waylon won't come out. We've already had the leadoff band play, but Waylon's not coming out, and people are sitting there and nothing's happening. And I went over there and I went in the bus and I said, what's wrong? I'm not coming out till you pay me. I said, that wasn't the deal. You get paid as part of the gate, and we haven't gotten the gate figured out yet. I'm not playing. I said, well, I tell you what, we get ready to have a riot. And I'm going to open these damn gates and let you be part of it if you don't get out there. Well, I had a guy working for me there named Larry Hefner. He was a great linebacker for the Packers. And he's down there, and he's about, 6'3", about 260 pounds. And first outlaw climbs the fence and hops down on the track and sees Larry there and starts doing all this kung fu stuff. And Larry just walked up and just hit him right in the mouth. It knocked him cold as a cucumber. It started wide open bedlam then. I mean, people are climbing the fence and all this kind of stuff, and they finally broke the gate at the flag stand to get in there. Well, we had security and police there, we just didn't have enough. And so what saved us was the highway patrol. We got a bunch of highway patrol guys in there, and if you ever see them open the trunk in North Carolina, get out of the way, because that means there's a riot. That's where they keep all the riot stuff back there, the shotguns and this, that, the other thing. So they quelled it and calmed it. And so we got through that, and I paid Waylon the next morning when we got it figured out, and he did extremely well. And so the rest is sort of history, but it was not a fun thing.
How did the idea for the Winston come about?
I had been pushing Bill France on us having a 200-mile races at Charlotte the Sunday before the 600, just like they did at Daytona. Well, he kept hemming and hawing, didn't want to do it, and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, I was trying to make Charlotte bigger and better than Daytona. That was my whole goal. And he knew that. And so I'd make these suggestions about how we could do better. And sometimes he'd go along with it. I mean, he was an even Steven guy. And but the idea of running qualifying races just, I couldn't get it done. So I kept thinking, well, maybe we could have an all-star race. And that didn't go well. But RJR picked up on it. And they were fueling NASCAR at the time. We had very few sponsors, very few race sponsors. Car sponsors were minimal. And they were the people putting the money in. So finally, RJR simply told NASCAR they wanted to have an all-star race. And NASCAR couldn't say anything because it was RJR. And so we did. And but it wasn't a format I liked. It was 67 miles is the way it worked out. Well, that's too long. And so we had the first race at Charlotte, and we had a heck of a crowd for it. And Darrell Walter won in Junior's car. And Harry Gant was leading the race. And Darrell was doing his Darrell trick, being coy, and just sitting back there and waiting. And then he took off. And Harry said, he passed me like I had an anchor on my car. And I knew it was all over then. And he just took off and wiped the field out. It ended up being a rather dull race, in my opinion, except for the fact that Darrell mysteriously blew his engine at the start and finish line. Wonder why he did that. So Darrell won the race, and we wanted it back the next year, but RJR had said in the announcement that they were going to move the race every year. And so we're going to have it Mother's Day weekend in Atlanta. And I said, boom, that won't work.
Yeah.
And it didn't. There's nobody in the grandstand. And again, the format was the same, and it was just dull, boring, and, wasn't there. So I went up there and cajoled them into bringing it back to Charlotte. And I said, we got to change the format. Let's have a 10-lap shootout at the end. And just kind of let NASCAR let the other way on a few things and just run it for $1 million to win. So that's what we did, and it worked. And the people loved it. So it was a good thing.